Hello, everybody. Welcome to this little afternoon discussion with myself and Joshua Tharby. Josh and I were on the phone a couple of days ago, sorry, and really discussing what our thoughts were as to what happens when this is all over. Of course, I think whispers are coming out that there's going to be another 3 weeks has been announced. And I think that the government really is what's happening right now is they're managing our expectations, and they'll push it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, until whenever somebody is happy and they can push the trigger as to where we go. So Josh and I don't quite agree as to what will happen afterwards, which is great because that means that you can get two views on what our thoughts are. So hopefully we'll all learn something. So I'll hand over to Josh and let him introduce himself. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Cam. Yep. So I'm Joshua Tharby. I'm managing director of an accountancy firm based in Peterborough. Got a couple of other businesses as well. I work with property investors, and yeah, that's how I know Cam.
Brilliant. Okay, so what do you think is the time period that we're in this thing for?
So I reckon I'm looking for holidays in July. That's how kind of optimistic I'm being on this. Whether it's misplaced, is this? I reckon about July things might go back to normal in terms of we're allowed out, restaurants are going to be open, bars are going to be open, and all kind of stuff goes back to in that respect.
Okay, so my thoughts are give or take a total of about 3 months.
Yeah.
Depending on how things go. Of course, I think today, Joshua, is supposed to be the peak day for us. Okay. And if it then goes downhill from here, and it really depends on how quickly we go downhill, I think, as to when we're finally let out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personally speaking, I've written off the summer in terms of trips abroad, etc.
Yeah.
Because other parts of the world will still they will be at a different part of the cycle.
Yeah.
So I brought off a trip to India in March, which was a really lucky escape, because had I gone, it would have meant I was stuck there right now.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And then I have a wedding that I should have gone to in California in June. So that won't be happening. And then I don't think even by August, I'm not sure that we'll be over it to be perfectly 100% safe with what's going on. But
yeah,
it's up to everybody, isn't it? I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and says, you do realize everything will be so cheap. So I said, well, I don't get how cheap it is. If there's a chance of me, kicking the bucket, well, it's not cheap enough, right?
I don't know. I saw 2 weeks in Cape Verde, all inclusive, 750 quid. That might just be worth the risk.
That's just kind of, I think it's what you're willing to tolerate, isn't it?
Yeah. I should be in Jamaica right now.
Okay.
Supposed to, unfortunately, I'm not. And I think another holiday, I think we're supposed to be going to Dubai in May. And that's looking unlikely as well. But it's not been officially cancelled yet. So it's just a case of waiting to see what happens with that. But it's very, very unlikely that I'll be going. So I've not bothered with the dieting side of things yet.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we were talking the other day about what our thoughts were, what happens after this. All right. So you work with a lot of businesses, and I have a fair few business contacts in terms of friends. I do quite a bit of work with the Bank of England from time to time in the regions. And then obviously, I mentor quite a lot of businesses. So we both have quite a broad sort of feel for what's going on and what will happen. So we let out today.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a massive party for the next 3, 4, 5 days. Whether it's credit cards or whether it's our own money. And I get that. I get that, right? I totally understand that. What happens after that?
Once everything just goes back to normal, people go back to work, people transition back in. I think give or take a few people, there's going to be quite a significant chunk of the industry of people that have just lost their businesses. They've given up kind of nurseries, people like that who've spent years building up their business, and now it's just gone. There's going to be quite a big hole in the economy left from that. But the vast majority of businesses that have had the right financial support, that have been able to have cash from the onset, so they're in a strong position to weather this, they're just going to continue trading, and they're going to be busier than ever.
Okay, so they're going to be busier than ever because of demand?
You could get demand and less competition.
Okay.
So the biggest and best business are going to be in a better position because some of their weaker competitors have not had the cash positions that they've had. They're not doing the marketing they've had during this time. So when it comes, everyone's out there spending money again, they're just going to go straight to them because that's their only choice.
Okay. Yep. So there's going to be winners and losers, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. So I'm a very big believer, and stats will prove me out, that there are more millionaires created in a recession than there are in boom times, right? So yeah. I totally agree with you there. What about the economy? Where do you think that goes, or where do you think that's heading?
So at the moment, we definitely heading for a recession, simply because it's just ground to a stop. Nothing's moving. People aren't really lending anymore. People aren't building houses. It's just everything that's needed for an economy to grow and work is just completely been ripped apart. So at the moment, we're heading towards a recession, but whether we're in lockdown for long enough and the economy's stopped essentially for enough months to make it an actual recession in terms of 2 quarters of decline in GDP, that's what we're just going to have to wait and see how long we're in isolation for.
Okay, so I was reading a publication from the World Trade Organization. So their figures have just borne out the fact that the economies of the world were slowing down towards the end of 2019.
Yeah.
And so that continued into 2020. And now, half of the world's population is in lockdown right now. So in effect, we're absolutely paralyzed. We know our economy is not doing anything. And I read that it's costing us about £2 billion a day.
Yeah.
So that's in lost production. And then put onto that what it's actually going to cost us for all these government measures. So you could double that and probably treble that if you talk about then what's being spent in terms of National Health Service, right? So, so that goes on for 3 months. So I think technically we'll be in a recession.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, from what I see around, so many businesses didn't downturn, low 3-6 month one.
Yeah.
So I think that there will be businesses that will be absolutely decimated, right?
Yeah.
And that'd be a real shame because, one of the things that is true of our economy, and we don't, as a country, we don't actually acknowledge it very much. I spend a lot of time in the US and I've got a lot of family out there. If you're self-employed, they really do have a lot of respect for you because you're trying to add to the economy, you're employing people. But we still seem to see small business people as some kind of like Del Boy Trotter kind of images. And the fact is, over 60% of people in this country are employed by small to medium-sized enterprises. Over 16 million people. And over the last 5 years, those small enterprises have created 2 million jobs. So if the life is now being sucked out of those businesses, I don't think they'll be in any state to take advantage of anything that happens going forward. So that's kind of where I am, and I think
there's definitely that part. I suppose this is kind of where, depending on whether they're falling through the cracks or not, or whether they are getting some of the economic stimulus that the government have provided for all these kind of SMEs that have all these employees, but they can't physically make any money. If they're gas engineers, they can't go out to site really, and things like that. As long as they're being furloughed and they're getting that grant, those employees are still getting paid, even if it's 80% of their salary. That's going to be enough for most people. So that's still covering their rent, that's still giving them money in their pocket, they're still shopping, they're still spending money on clothes and what they want to do. So there's that part of it that's still ticking over. So those guys, all the people that, I think it's 9 million people have been furloughed so far, when the government are expecting it to only be 3 million. So there's a massive shortfall there on the government's part, in that they really underestimated the challenges that people are going through and the cost of it. But then that's 9 million people that have still got 80% at least of their wages.
Well, look, that's the other part of any recession, any downturn. If you keep your job, you actually are in a better position. It doesn't feel like it because all the news around you is really bad. But the fact is, everything is cheaper. So
yeah.
I've got my children at home right now. So they're working from home. So apart from the fact that they're in tenancy agreements for which we're having to pay rent,
yep.
they've got no traveling expenses, no going out expenses, nobody's buying any clothes. So if they are working from home for the next 3 months, they will actually be a lot better off. And as you said, receiving 80% of your salary, sitting at home with nothing really to spend money on other than food, you know, as an individual or a family, you're actually, there's nothing really wrong at this moment in time, from an economic point of view. But as a business, you know, all your orders are gone, you know, all your customers are gone. It's like starting again, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm sure many companies are going to actually have to start again when they've actually got. I was speaking to somebody. He's got a kind of kitchen fit business. He doesn't want to take on loads of debt. He's not comfortable doing that, so he's just thinking, okay, I'm just going to close the company down and start again in a couple of months when we're out of this. He doesn't want to do anything else, and that's probably going to be the same as a lot of other people. They're just going to start again.
What do you think on that point? Because I was watching something the other day, and they were talking about that very same point, that as a self-employed small business, if you don't think you're going to make it through, close it now.
Yeah.
Don't carry on bleeding. You know, shut it off, shut it down, and then do whatever it is when the time is right. Would you advise that?
It depends what business it is and how comfortable you are. If someone said that to me, if we all of a sudden all of our clients stop paying our direct debits, I'm quite comfortable. I'm willing to take the risk that this isn't going to last more than 6 months before people can pay their accountant again. So if I needed to, I would get debt to bridge that, just because I don't want to start again. It's my business, and I'm quite comfortable that we can make it through it. So it just depends on kind of what your costs are. If for instance, you're a company and you've got massive fixed costs, you can't get out of them, you've got onerous leases and all of that kind of stuff, then yeah, close it down, burn your bridges. But if you've got a low fixed cost base and you can be quite agile, then definitely just see it through and cut all your expenses and go on the bare minimum for the next couple of months.
Yeah. So if you're a restaurant that was struggling to start with, you know, one of those businesses that's really been hit hard, and we don't know what people will do. You know, obviously, the day this thing's lifted, as I said, we probably have a party, and the bars and pubs and clubs will be full for a few days, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a restaurant, you know, and that was struggling to start with, it's going to take a while for everything to pick back up for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So then that period that you're talking about is not 3 months; it might be 6 or 9 months. Yeah. So would you as an accountant especially, would you advise that somebody cuts their losses now rather than letting things linger on?
Especially restaurants are a great example of this. Rather than saying, okay, great, I can't do anything in this current climate, I'd say pivot. We got a couple of clients. So this morning I started a personal training session, my PT, from home. So there are examples of businesses that are pivoting and just making do in the crisis we're in. So a restaurant, I wouldn't say close down. I'd say become the best takeaway in your city, and focus on the opportunities that are out there at the moment, rather than, okay, great, we can't do this. Right, I'd say, yeah, Deliveroo, they're still working. Uber Eats, you can get on all these places. People are sitting at home, they're fed up of eating all the pasta that they've stockpiled for the past couple of weeks. They want a good takeaway, so you can provide it to them.
That's a great example of what businesses should be doing, and we are seeing a lot of that, and having a conversation today about businesses that are pivoting. So, you know, you and I, we deal with quite a lot of people in property. So the property market has effectively been frozen in terms of there's no lending going on, the conveyancers are closed, the estate agents are virtually closed. So that will last until obviously estate agents and people are allowed to open back up. So it could be a 3-month period that business is standing still. What are your thoughts about what people should be doing? You know, they could be investors, they could be landlords, they could be people doing rent to rent. And SA obviously is the big area that's been affected massively. What are your thoughts on about that?
So with the property industry, I suppose with SA, they really are in a bad position in that Airbnb, they've given guests refunds. You can't actually book a stay on Airbnb now, I think, if you're a UK traveller, unless unless you're a key worker. So their revenues have been completely wiped out. Some people are just trying to stick a tenant in there on a long-term basis, all bills included. And really, we've just been speaking to our clients saying, just try as hard as you can to cover your costs and break even for these next couple of months, because that's the best you're going to be able to do. Then aside from that, it's just a case of accepting, over the past couple of years, rent to SA, all these kind of property strategies, they have been lucrative. So on average, they're still really great strategies. It's a great business, but this little dip, you just got to work with it and use the time to do other stuff in your business, work on your systems, get your bookkeeping up to date, do all your tax returns, and just use this for all the admin side of things that you never usually get around to doing. And just keep working on your goals, your plans, looking at your goal one areas, identifying properties. Because you can still get, so if you're a cash investor, you can still get a good deal at the moment. Lending was obviously dried up, decent loan to values, but for some people, there are still opportunities out there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'm hearing a lot about, because obviously I get a lot of questions asked on property forums and privately, and I wanted to address it because the subject's up now. So if you're an SA, you know, one of the things I've always advised on SA is make sure it stands up as a normal rental at worst.
Yeah.
But I think if you're new in business, then perhaps you haven't got the experience to weather something like this. And perhaps it's the first time that you're making losses. You know, welcome to the real world, right? Because business doesn't always make money. So I'm reading a lot of people saying, hand the keys in, and landlords saying, give me the keys if you can't pay my rent. And so some of the private clients that I have, I've never really liked the idea of SA.
Yeah.
So you'll understand where I'm coming from. So my background's in financial services and property, right? So I know how to structure a portfolio for risk. So if you had 10 or 15% of your portfolio that you manage in SA and the rest of it was in rent to rent or guaranteed rents, then obviously only 10 to 15% of your portfolio is at risk right now.
Yeah.
And then you could weather this storm. But because SA was so lucrative, people went all in, didn't they?
Yeah.
So the problem with going all into anything is sometimes the house wins, right?
Yeah.
And it takes everything. So the thing is, I think the advice that you offered is absolutely fantastic. So you don't always make money. If you can ride this out, there'll be a lot more opportunity at the other end because other people will have chucked the towel in. So there'll be a lot of management opportunities for properties. And the reputation that you can build yourself right now by continuing to pay rents to your landlords and not running away at the first bit of hardship that's come along in your business will really cement and make you.
Yeah,
do you agree with that?
Completely agree. Yeah, spot on. It's almost a case of just knowing that you've got the good and the bad. There are definitely so many opportunities out there. I've seen people giving their properties back to landlords, even though these are fantastic deals. Perhaps 6 months ago, they were making them £2,000 a month, giving the properties back, fully furnished, all that kind of stuff. Whereas for somebody now who's sitting on a pile of £50,000, they should be going out there, speaking to people, getting these deals, and thinking, great, for the next 3 to 6 months or so, perhaps, this is going to be a loss maker. But then after that, this is a fantastic deal. Yeah,
I saw a video by somebody on Facebook saying, if you're thinking of handing your keys in on rent-to-rent properties, give them to us.
Yeah.
And I think if I was in that business today, that's exactly what I would be doing, looking at deals that other people needed to throw in the towel on. So going forward in the property business, obviously you and I have seen a real increase in the number of people that are trying to get into that business. And of course, we've had loads of trainers and courses and weekend warriors, etc. What do you see happening going forward in that, Josh?
I think it's just boom and bust. A couple of them are going to fall out of the market now. But once we're back into things, all of these property strategies that are being sold is kind of get rich quick and all that kind of stuff. Fundamentally, if you work them hard enough, most of them will make you a decent amount of money. And the same will be true in 6 to 9 months when we're kind of fully out of this, the world's back to normal again. So it's going to be a case of for the next 6 to 9 months, a lot of people are going to be kind of hurt, quiet, and they're not going to be saying much. But then after that, there'll be new people coming on and kind of selling these strategies and training people.
So do you see that training changing at all? Because I'm a recent entrant, as you know, into property training, and I'm not into any of this rah and happy clappy shit, because this is what happens. Because a lot of these people, they've never been trained that there can be a downturn. It's not sunny every day. So, and that's when, late last year, we started looking at the models that people were doing, because I've got about a year under my belt. And I thought, this really isn't me, and it doesn't work. The vast majority of people hand their money over and they're not very successful because, they need the hand holding. So I started my property one-to-one mentorship program, which I only work with 20 people now. But that means that I can dedicate the time to their businesses. And we work, and very fortunate, we'd already started doing it online through Zoom calls. So that was at the beginning of the year. And so we just fell right back into that and just cancelled a few events that we had and did, everything online. So my business is actually growing. I think we took 4 or 5 new clients on this month. So from that point of view, do you see a flight to sort of quality in people thinking that this get rich quick stuff really isn't for everybody?
Yeah, I suppose some of the people that have been around for a while and that maybe this is really affecting now. But I suppose every day more and more people were kind of leaving university. They don't like the job that they're in and they are looking for a way out. So there's always going to be that new flood of people that are almost falling into this trap and they're kind of lured in. So there might be like a small change in the short term, but I think overall there's not going to be a big enough change for any of us to notice, because there's just more and more people that kind of want to get rich quick.
Yeah, short memories, huh?
Yeah.
So, Joshua, I think that we're heading for a really deep recession. The Americans have pumped in $2 trillion. They've added 5 million people to their jobless total. I don't know whether our figures are out yet. I haven't seen anything for the UK. I was reading the other day that 195 million people have already lost their jobs across the world. So that's a lot of hurt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Europe was going into recession anyway before this thing started, and Germany and France were tipped to go into recession. So if they haven't already, I think France may already be technically in recession if their next quarter's figures have come out. And then we've got, I don't know, like we said at the beginning of our conversation, we've got, I don't know, maybe 500, 700, 800 billion that we're pumping in right now to hold ourselves up. So that's all going to be paid back, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely.
How quickly do you think the government will try and recover that and raise taxation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because unlike the last recession, I mean, they've already started printing money. I don't think the press has ever stopped, but the Bank of England doesn't really have the interest rate mechanism. So if those of you that don't know or don't remember, interest rates were at 5 or 6% at pre-2006, 2007, and they came all the way down to virtually zero, which is where they are now. But they didn't really get above about 2%, did they, during the whole of the last 10 years? So so the Bank of England doesn't have that mechanism that it can stimulate demand by lowering interest rates. And so I really see a lot of pain over the next few years. And again, the industry that I work in is property. And where I see the real pain is some of these smallest towns and cities that had seen double-digit growth in property prices over the last few years. And only in, I think it was December, every single postcode in this country, the prices were above the pre-crash prices of 2008. So they'd only just caught up. So what I see now is, when we have a contraction in property, everybody always runs to quality. So London is the quality of this country. Then every town and city has its area of quality. Northampton will have it, Leicester has it. And then some of these smaller places where prices were going nuts over the last few years. And I believe that they were going crazy because people who lived in properties that were relatively expensive were seeing these other areas that were not expensive, and suddenly it looked like a bargain.
Yeah.
And I think they drove those prices up. So I think those are the places that are going to be hit really savagely, and those property prices will come straight back down. I mean, great opportunity for some people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone with cash right now, it's a great time.
Yeah. So I've been selling for the last 3 years. So I felt that I needed, so when I was in the process of selling my estate agency business, I also realigned everything else. So everything that was high risk, those HMO type properties, I didn't need the added burden of the management that those kind of properties naturally take. And then I had some semi-commercial properties with shop and flats above, which was secondary positions. So my thinking is that we can't have a Starbucks in every shop in the next 10 years. So the take up of those would be less. So I got rid of all those. And the last one I sold was February 2019, we completed on it. So just over a year ago. Yeah. And so my partner asked me whether it was a wise decision. And the transaction price of that was just below £500,000. I think it's 497,000 quid. And I said, you know what, I bet you that we'll be able to come back and buy this for £400,000 in 10 years. So where do you see property prices going in the next 4, 5, 6 years?
I think they're going to bounce, simply because at the moment, I think it's 80% of construction sites, they're not working. So in terms of addressing the national shortage on new properties that are required to house everybody, it's not going to come. So kind of supply and demand side of things, there's not going to be that supply of new properties coming to the market. Depending on how long this lasts, it could be kind of 6 to 12 months to delay on absolutely everything. So there's not going to be these new properties, and as such, the properties that are out there and available already, people are going to be able to snap them up because they're there. So as soon as the kind of lenders and the banks start lending money again, the people that have got the cash now who would otherwise be invested in property, they're just going to go back to exactly how they are, buy their properties, and essentially business as normal.
So that's for experienced people, right? This is my third recession. So the first one did to me what it's doing to all the newbies right now, right? If you haven't seen one and you had a fantastic SA business that's been wiped out, that's exactly what happened to me when I went through the first one, right? So that's absolutely fantastic. But if all of a sudden we end up with 2, 3, 4 million people on the dole without jobs, because everything in this country is about confidence, right? So
that's it.
60% of our economy is consumer spending, 20% is business and commerce, and 20% is government, right? So if businesses aren't investing because they haven't got the money, or they can't get it, and then consumers don't have the confidence to go out and spend, people are not going to be moving house, are they?
Well, yeah, that's true. I suppose it kind of depends really on who gets hurt and how long this lasts. I mean, all these people that have been in their jobs a while, if they get made redundant, they might get kind of big redundancy payments and things like that. But they're still getting, I suppose it kind of depends how many people just get their 80% and they're banking it. A lot of the big companies, they're protecting themselves. So we've got kind of big insurance companies. Everyone's still buying insurance at the moment. It's something you need. But they're furloughing all of their staff just because they can. So there's a lot of businesses that are just kind of banking piles of cash, and they've got to use those sometime or other. So the money will be kind of reinvested around sooner or later.
Interesting point, furloughing staff. So do you think the 3 million went to 9 million because companies are just taking advantage of the scheme right now? They didn't need to get rid of their staff? They are, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's literally just a case of every single finance director's out there just thinking, how much cash have we got now? Yeah, sure, we could afford to pay our staff for the next 12, 24 months. But the government have just come along and said we can furlough them and reclaim 80%. Why are we not doing that? When they designed this scheme, I'm almost certain they designed it for the hospitality industry, kind of Starbucks, McDonald's, all of these kind of lower level people that were, if they were to lose their job, that kind of side of the economy would really suffer. So it's designed for these businesses that are forced to close. I don't think they really took into consideration the wider impacts of this and the businesses that didn't really need to take advantage of this scheme, taking advantage of it.
So leads us nicely on to the government's loan scheme, CBILS.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in that? What's your experience so far?
So far, it's really hard to get a loan under it. The requirements are quite stringent. I think I saw last week so far out. I think only 1,000 loans have been put out.
Yeah.
And the CBILS. They're looking to try and get more through that, obviously, but I don't think it's going to help the people that really need it. No,
it's a shame, isn't it? And it's exactly what I'm seeing. So I think they launched the scheme prematurely.
Yeah.
I think the problem that we have is that we have got a government that obviously didn't know what they were doing, but they kind of pandered to what was needed without thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, the very new government, new people in these roles, not experienced hands, hadn't seen anything that's gone on. And I think they just launched it prematurely without having the banks on board.
Yeah.
And then they had to go back, didn't they? And I think they suspended it for a couple of days. And then they had to go and rattle the cages of the banks and then say, okay, here we go. The other thing that I see is that all the commercial finance brokers are not remunerated in any way for putting these schemes up to banks.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what I've heard as well from speaking to people.
So the banks got rid of all their relationship managers. So there's no, they don't have the cover that they used to have 4 or 5 years ago. So you don't have, I used to have my relationship manager's mobile phone number. So it's all been centralized now. They got rid of all the guys that were on the ground that were talking to small businesses the last 4, 5, 6 years. Didn't think they needed them. So they've got no people on the ground to deal with these applications or guide anybody through. And then we've got a small army of commercial loan brokers who are not remunerated in any way. I'm told it's about a day and a half's worth of work to get all this stuff together for them.
Yeah. They got, in terms of economy, if one lender declines you, it's a whole new application process for each one. You need all your management accounts, 2 years worth of stat accounts, forecast. You need to show how your business has been impacted by the coronavirus and how what your action plan is to get around it. It's a hell of a process to get one in place.
And so they could have actually said, look, we'll pay these advisors to secure these loans or get the paperwork done. So most of them are just sitting on their hands saying, well, why should we do this? And so there's a real disjoint, isn't there, in what's being announced by the government and what's actually out there right now.
Yeah.
And if it is just 1,000 loans, that's shameful, isn't it? That's absolutely shameful because, like you said, very sustainable, and it's big business again, right?
Yeah.
That takes advantage of these. So big business, thousands and thousands of employees, where the business is quite sustainable. They've been offered 80% of their employees' salaries for the next 3 months. They could just fill a form in and get all that money, right? Yeah. Self-employed people, we want to see your accounts. What have you been doing over the last year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the people that really needed the money have got all these hurdles to prove. I mean, and I understand you can't give money to people that weren't earning anything before.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a free handout, but surely it could have been designed far better, couldn't it? The money is not going where it's needed, is it?
Absolutely. It's kind of so many people that they've left out. Kind of a lot of the limited company owner managers, they've been kind of completely left out. There's a massive amount of people that seem to have just been overlooked, and I can't really see why, or whether it's done on purpose. If they kind of said, yeah, you've had the risks and rewards of owning your business, you've had all the good years, you know, now you've got to just suffer and pay for the bad times. Maybe that's what they're thinking. Yeah, it was really hard to kind of know what their method is behind it all.
I always think there's a problem in that well-meaning people, very well educated, very well qualified, as people, members of parliament generally tend to be, especially the cabinet, you know, advised by very well educated civil servants and very well-meaning people, very rarely take advice from people that are actually in the field.
Yeah. And
I don't necessarily agree that the leaders of our organizations that represent business are necessarily in touch with what reality is, or indeed that they're actually consulted in, you know, where do you think, because the shame of this is that there's all the money that's available, right? Because all we have to do is print the damn stuff. It's not backed by anything, really. You know, it's not backed by anything, so we can print of it as much of it as we like, right? The government is going to end up spending, I don't know, 7, 8, 1,000 billion, I don't know, and then we're going to get all these people that needed very small amounts of money.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the Americans, and Trump said this straight out off the bat, he said, it's the money getting to actual people will be too slow. So they are sending, or have sent, I think it's $1,000 for every adult and $400 or $600 for every child to people's houses. So because people need food today, right? Not in 3 months' time.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think something like that needed to be done, so we could quickly, because at the end of the day, you know, why does a 50, 60, 70, 100 million pound PLC in our company, in our country, need to furlough their 1,000 employees all of a sudden? That's costing us God knows what. Imagine how many businesses that money could save.
Yeah, literally a massive proportion, just by putting the money in the right place.
Yeah, it's a shame. So is there an answer to all of this? What should we do going forward now? What mistakes are there that you think the government will learn from?
I think at the moment I can't see them changing anything unless they think it's going to go on for a lot longer than kind of 3 months. I think anything longer than that, and if there's a big fall in GDP, then they're going to have to kind of really relook at what's gone on, who's been affected, and almost make sure that those people are getting the help they need. But I think anything up to kind of 3 months worth of lockdown, it's the case of people that have been left out and are in a position, they're just going to have to kind of defend for themselves. If it gets to that bad, kind of universal credits and that kind of state support, that's what it's going to be limited to. Yeah.
And how much effect do you think the fact that, you know, our Prime Minister being incapacitated, being in hospital, and you know, wish him well from the bottom of my heart, because, you know, if somebody's worked hard, that's him, regardless of, you know, what political color you are. How much of an effect do you think that's having? Because I think it's having a massive effect that we don't have any leadership, and they're swapping. You know, Sunak did the thing yesterday, and then we had I think was it the Home Secretary the day before that or something?
Yeah, I think it's having quite a big impact, simply because you don't kind of know who's who. There's no clear, coherent message. Essentially, we've not got one leader. We've kind of got, at the moment, it's kind of, you know, kind of those 2 or 3, all with kind of different directions. So you need kind of one person really to lead the army, if not, you're going to go in all these different directions. So it's just a case of, it's quite bad that he's got ill, and we need to get him. He needs to kind of get back into number 10 as soon as possible, to kind of steer us out of this.
Yeah, really interesting, isn't it? That, you know, a nation, you know, the mother of all parliaments, and we don't have a deputy prime minister.
Yeah, I think it's Dominic Raab. I think it's the first Secretary of State. He's kind of stepped in, but he's not a deputy. In America, it'd be fine. You know, deputy president just steps in and continues as normal.
Yeah, vice president. We had a deputy prime minister, didn't we? I think Tony Blair created a deputy prime minister. John Prescott, I believe, was deputy prime minister. And I think the Conservative Party had a deputy prime minister at some point as well. I think Michael Heseltine was deputy at some point under Margaret Thatcher. So, but because we don't have a written constitution, because I think we look like a bit of a joke right now. It's like, who wants to take the lead today? It's shocking, isn't it, really, at this level, that we don't have somebody to take over from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I completely agree. They kind of, especially in a time like this when you've got this kind of crisis, they should have a backup plan. Okay, what happens if anything bad happens to him? Even if he kind of was assassinated or something extreme like that, what's the backup plan?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Joshua, I can't see the questions coming through, if there are any, guys. So guys, if you've got any questions. So I'm sorry that we've not been sort of acknowledging anybody. It's simply because we can't see it on the Zoom screen now. I certainly can't see it. So if you've got questions, fire them away. I'll try and get mine up and see if I can see them.
So we've had. What do you think of the impact of all employees being furloughed, even if businesses claim it back? Do you think job retention will stay?
Do we think job retention will stay? Look, if we have an economic downturn, people will not move. It's a fact, right?
Yeah.
So people will stay. If the question is, do you think that after the period of furlough, will companies keep employees? If they don't need them, they've got every reason to get rid of them. The government have asked, Sunak really asked industry and companies to do him a favor. Say, don't throw all these people on the dole and I will pay them, which is really what it was. So after the 3 months over, companies are not obligated to keep those employees. So they'll be disposed of and fired. In the first week of the crisis, the Americans added 5 million people to their unemployment figures, and that was due to that, I think. Yeah. What else we got, Josh? There'll be a V-shaped recovery. I think the days of boom and bust have gone. World governments will do anything it takes to get the economies going. I think the second quarter will show a massive contraction, which is expected, but then expect a decent recovery. I don't see house prices suffering, but there will be opportunities to buy distressed businesses and other sectors. So that's from Jag. Hi, Jag. I think Joshua's for a V-shaped recovery. I'm not. I think we're going to get absolutely hammered. I think that we will get a huge deficit, and I don't think that we'll get confidence in the market to the point that people start going out and spending. So remember, 60% of our economy is consumer spending, right? So if you're in fear of your job, if you're in fear of this thing happening again next winter, we're into spring now, we're into summer. If all of a sudden, we get told this thing could happen again, and there's a fear of lockdown, I think people that have got money will hang on to it. Business people will seek out opportunities because they always do, right? So if somebody's got money and they could buy a rival company for next to nothing, they'll buy it. If somebody's a property investor and they see cheap property, they'll buy it. If somebody invests in the stocks and they've got money, they see cheap stocks, they'll buy those. But those people are in a minority. So I don't see a V-shaped situation in the economy. What about you, Joshua?
Yeah, I suppose in a way it's going to be kind of a weird shaped V, but it's going to be we're going to drop and it's almost going to level out. I think I'm not sure whether there's going to be kind of massive growth. I'm just not quite sure there'll be a big retraction or big price falls in terms of property. Simply because sooner or later the volumes are going to pick up again. Once people go back to work and they're in their job kind of one or 2 months, people are going to start to forget about this. They are going to become more comfortable, confident, and it'll only be a matter of months or kind of low number of years before people kind of forget about this whole thing and they're buying houses again, and it's kind of literally just another blip on a timeline.
Yeah, but you think that timeline's quite short, right? And I think it's long.
Okay. Absolutely. I mean, under 12 months.
Okay, I don't, if I'm wrong, I'd be really happy. So, I take no pride in saying, look, I told you so, because people suffer, right, in recessions. And I'm not for the few that take advantage of the situation and spend some money and buy some cheap assets. So, I'm for the many benefiting. So I hope I'm wrong. I don't, and it works out, and we're sitting here in 12 months time, say, remember that afternoon.
Yeah.
But I really don't see it. I see that we were due for a recession. It was long overdue. Yeah, stock markets were hitting record highs every single day. House prices, property prices were going through the roof, not only in our country, in most parts of the world, to unsustainable levels. So there had to be a correction. And the problem is, we now just don't know how big that pullback is going to be or how long it's going to last. But the thing is that markets depend on confidence. And if we don't have confidence that our wages are going to carry on rising, that our jobs are secure, that if I start a business, there's opportunities out there for me, then there's contraction, right?
Yeah.
So, recessions are caused by me and you not going out spending. And if people are afraid to spend, then it will not happen. If the unemployment figures start rising and the government tries to balance its books by taxing us more,
yeah.
So it could be the perfect storm, couldn't it, for this thing to last quite a while. So there is massive encouragement for the fact that, there's massive motivation at this moment in time for there to be a very quick recession and a turnaround, because the leader of the free world, Mr. Trump, needs to get re-elected in November.
Yeah.
Right. And whether we like it or not, they are about 50% of the world's economy. So whatever anybody else, whatever they do, we all follow. Doesn't matter. We can pretend and dance around and say we're this or we're that. Especially our country. So if he can engineer a very quick recovery because he wants to get into power, not necessarily because it's the best thing for everybody, then brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. And I think we'll have dodged a bullet then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And off we go on our merry way, and the FTSE recovers to 7,500, wherever it was, because it's about 5,500 at the moment.
Yeah, it's a great time to be investing.
Yeah. Now again, I saw something which said don't rush back in. So is this the capitulation of something that's going to go even worse? Because in every cycle you see the market going up, comes down, goes up, and I think it goes back up twice on average.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So is this the up before it actually goes? The other thing is, I have the conspiracy theory of the fact that I think that the city wants to suck in all the suckers with any money before they go off and shut up shop, because retail investors always act in opposite directions to what the institutional investors are doing, right?
Yeah.
So they tend to pile in when markets are high and get out because they're low, because they've lost the money now, lost confidence. Whereas the institutional investors trade in exactly the opposite way, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose it kind of depends really on what it is you're actually kind of investing in. Kind of how long you're willing to ride the storm out. I suppose to say it's probably not the bottom. I suppose as we get pushed into lockdown more and as it takes its toll on a lot of companies, as people start to issue profit warnings left, right, and centre, then it's probably going to bottom out even further. But on a long-term view, a lot of these companies are still looking very attractive.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing is that it's great time for companies to get all the bad news out, isn't it?
Yeah, because they'll just get lost.
Yeah. Anything that you've got, if you've got a division that's not making any money, whatever is going on that's wrong in that business, it's a great time to push it out and blame it on COVID or the economic downturn, etc. So sometimes that position is sort of exaggerated, isn't it, as to how bad things are?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a case of issuing it all out at once. People think, okay, yeah, great, it's the coronavirus, that's what's caused this. But otherwise, it's a great company when it might have actually been a bad thing in total.
Yeah. So, for those looking for opportunity, it's time to think about what you're going to do. And if you're in business and you're hurting right now, I think it's how can you pivot?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Completely agree with that.
Okay. And, you know, there's a massive exodus to get online right now. But there'll be people like me who have worked at home and hate the isolation, love being around people, who will go back to what they wanted to do and still want to interact with other people. So I think there'll be an army of people that think, hey, this home working is fantastic. And there'll be another army of people say, I hate this, I want an office.
Yeah. Most people seem to love the kind of office vibe. I suppose some people I've kind of mentioned, they reckon that there's going to be a lot of offices empty after this because people suddenly realise they can run a lean, efficient business, everyone working from home. But I don't think that's true, because people love going to the office, people love socialising, and that's still going to be in place after this.
Yeah, I've got a number of friends. Obviously, most of my friends are all self-employed, all work for themselves. So one of my friends has a very, very large property. You'd call it a mansion. Has a huge study, and he took an office. I moved here in January, and I decided that I wanted an office towards the end of last year. And I thought, you know, it's good housekeeping just to take it at the end of beginning of January instead of paying rent for a place that I'm going to have for half the month in December. So about October, November time, I spoke to Jav and I said, listen, you've just taken an office in Manchester city centre. He said, yeah. I said, you know, you must have a huge study at home. He said, yep. I said, so what happened? Tell me what the pros and cons are. I said, Cam, just one word, productivity.
Yeah.
Right. So he's a family friend. So, you know, we know each other's families. And he said, I know exactly what your house is like. Mine's exactly the same. You know, there's people around, my kids are around, my wife's around. And it's, should we have a cup of coffee? Should we do this? Should we do that? And there's so many distractions. And I said, you don't need to tell me anything more. And so one of the reasons that after 3 weeks, I decided that I wanted to come back into my office because of productivity.
Yeah, completely agree. Especially I'm the same. Just, when you're at work, you're there to work. So it's quite difficult to switch between the two, working from home. You go downstairs, you get a coffee, and before you know it, you wasted 30, 40 minutes on something which usually takes you 30 seconds. But you don't get that kind of stuff at the office. It's just, you're there to work. It's a completely different environment, and people aren't going to forget that.
No. So I don't think it'll be the mass exodus out of offices that people are predicting it will be.
Yeah.
But look, you know, I'm not in the office rental space. I don't really care. Right? that doesn't bother me. And neither are you. So it doesn't really matter what people do. But I do think that we're social creatures, and we want to interact with other people, right? Yeah. So I don't think you'll ever end that. I think it's opened up a new channel of communication, though. So personally, I don't think I'll be traveling as often and as far just to do a single meeting. Yeah. So, you know, I'd quite happily travel into London for half a day meeting. I don't think I'd do that anymore. Would you?
I think I would. I think in terms of the kind of, in terms of when you, I suppose, going to London, it's kind of, you go in there, you're meeting the person, and you kind of, I think it's still different to kind of a Zoom call like we're on now, essentially. Yeah. It's a lot more social. It's a lot more engaging in terms of kind of, if you're working on something, you're meeting a consultant, you're working through a project, it is a lot better kind of being in the same presence rather than just on a computer screen.
One of the things that I decided very early on when I was decided to do my one-to-one mentoring. So one of the issues I used to have was geography, obviously travel, and certain clients were in Scotland and Wales and would say, look, Cam, how do we get together? Or they couldn't make the date. So Zoom was perfect for that.
Yeah.
But part of that program was still to do an initial face-to-face. So, you know, I'll typically spend 3 or 4 hours with a client when we first want to have the initial consultation, which I think, like you said, is very, very important. And that meeting, obviously now I'm having to do them on Zoom. So this month I didn't get to meet any of my new clients, which is really unusual. Because that interaction, when you first meet, I think once the relationship's established and you're doing the routine stuff, it's quite easy then.
Yeah, definitely. It's in terms of kind of, you have to see somebody really in 3D in front of you before you can really kind of know them and trust them, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's important. Look, should we wrap up? If there's nothing else, we've been going just about an hour, which is surprising. So, guys, if there's any more questions, pop them on here now, or if you think of stuff after this, then pop it on this live chat in the comments, and either Josh or I will get back to you. So, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that was useful and gave you some little insights into how you can go forward with your business, and how you can really, like, as we said, it's about taking advantage of the opportunities that this thing presents us, right? And nobody caused this. It's nobody's fault in terms of the people that are listening to us today. So there doesn't need to be any guilt about talking about planning for what happens afterwards, right? So the best thing that we can do is stay safe, look after ourselves, look after our families. But what do you do with that time? So that time is to plan what you're going to do, to be, straight out the blocks, as it were, when the government says, look, it's business as usual. So that's what I would do. Any final thoughts, Joshua?
Yeah, I'd really echo that. Really, don't focus on kind of the bad situation you might find yourself in now. Just use this time as a time to, rather than kind of being in a retraction mindset, just think of growth and opportunity, and it will present itself. It might not be what you're doing now, but there are opportunities out there. People are still kind of making money. You just got to be resourceful and just take advantage of where we are.
Yeah, and that's the way to be. So, guys, until next time, take care. Everybody, have a great evening. And you, Joshua, thank you so much.
Yeah,
really insightful. Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay. Take care, buddy.
Bye.
Bye now.